This past weekend, I had the privilege of attending AlterConf with Brandy Foster, one of our application developers and head of our diversity and inclusion department here at Detroit Labs. Thank you to all of the speakers at AlterConf. It was a great conference. It was single track, so that meant that all of the talks were in a row, so we didn't miss a single talk. That was excellent. Thank you to all of the facilitators, and thank you to everyone who also attended. I wanted to talk today about some of the takeaways that we had here at Detroit Labs that we could apply at our business level as well as at an individual level. The first talk that I wanted to discuss was Deconstructing the Code of Conduct by Safia Abdallah. She talks about constructing a code of conduct in open source communities, but we also thought that you could apply those same principles to making a code of conduct or guidelines for software development teams, or even just for a business. A couple of the points that she went into were the counter arguments against codes of conduct. One of the arguments was, well, you might be targeting people who are from different backgrounds or speak English as a second language. It might be excluding people like that, and you might say that it's limiting their freedom of speech. The First Amendment was put in place to protect United States citizens in case they wanted to speak out against the government, so that there would be no negative repercussions against them just for voicing their concerns. It's not really there to protect people who want to troll on the internet and insult other people in open source communities. It's really just something so that people can voice their opinions and feel safe doing so. So a lot of people will argue, well, this goes against my First Amendment rights. That's not really true. Codes of conduct are just trying to instill guidelines so that people will be polite to each other on the internet. It's not encroaching on your First Amendment laws or anything like that. Another one was, people will say, I wish that I could revise the code of conduct. When you open up the revisions of code of conduct to everybody that's contributing to the open source community, a lot of things start to be lost. When you have a close-knit group of collaborators that are managing this code of conduct and managing these guidelines for the community, you can actually make decisions. That way, you can actually implement things, changes to the codes of conduct, etc. The next talk I wanted to discuss was Johnny Vu's skill-based hiring talk. That was a really important one to me because I was hired on a skills-based criteria, I suppose. Without skills-based hiring, I wouldn't be at Detroit Labs. So Johnny Vu discusses a huge obstacle that a lot of companies face, especially larger ones, in their hiring requirements. A lot of companies require college degrees in computer science, which we're seeing more and more as an ineffective way to vet candidates. Candidates usually have experience with self-teaching programming or going to boot camps, basically non-traditional computer science backgrounds. When you limit yourself to computer science degrees, you're missing out on 92% of African American females, 90% of African American candidates in general, and when you even scrutinize on the level of top tier universities like Yale, Harvard, etc., you're going down to 98% of people are excluded from the hiring process. Candidates should have the option of coming to a company and working with whatever background that they've got, as long as they're proficient in their computer science skills. When you open up skills-based hiring as a company, you get a much more diverse pool of candidates. Many more experiences are represented at your company, and your company's culture is going to grow as a result. Another talk that I wanted to discuss was Carly Ho's What's in a Name validation. This talks about web forms and application forms that use a first name, last name format. The first name, last name format for registration or login or anything like that is a Eurocentric standard. It excludes people who have hyphenated first or last names, or who may have two last names. When we open up form validation, and instead of excluding people with hyphens or symbols in their name, and just use a term that the user is comfortable with, say they only have one name, or say they have a long last name, we get much better user experience as a result. A lot of users feel like their name isn't valid when you say invalid name just because it doesn't conform to your server's standards. Instead of saying invalid name or cannot accept name, you should go into detail with the user and describe why. Our service is limited because we cannot accept symbols or characters. Please contact us if you have any questions. Open it up so that the user can get in touch with you and try to get around your server's limits or your application's limits. The last talk that I wanted to discuss in detail was Charlene King's Disabled by Design, Designed by Choice. This talks about design choices in applications that give accessibility options to users. Not many apps on the market are very accessible to people with any kind of disability, whether it be some sort of vision impairment or hearing impairment. There are not a lot of options out there like subtitles, color blindness, increased magnification, etc. We need to think about those limitations when we make applications. When we are speaking with clients, we need to tell them the benefit that they're going to get by adding accessibility features to their apps. It might be tough to convince a large client to add in accessibility features to their app if it's going to take extra time. You have to put them in that scenario so that they understand how users feel when they can't access the app like others can. This is something that we're going to try to do at Detroit Labs. When we're consulting with clients, we're going to try to tell them accessibility features are important in all updates of the app. Even though it takes the extra time, it's worth it. So I'm not going to go into full detail about all of the other talks at the conference just because that would make this vlog really, really lengthy. But I do want to skim over some of the other talks and briefly discuss some of the takeaways from those. There were talks on open data and police reform, employee resource groups, which are employee-focused groups at large companies, demystifying technology to those who are not familiar with the tech industry, surveillance state, race, and disability in the United States, people you may want to forget, or basically a talk on warning users when you may trigger various memories or experiences by bringing up old contacts from their phone or old contacts from their Facebook, Twitter, etc. Real talk on making it, basically a talk that goes into the work that a lot of famous people with a lot of media and internet exposure, all the work that they have to put in behind the scenes to get where they're at. Speaking about how there is no overnight fame. There's a lot of work to even viral success. A lot of research that goes into it. And eating in tech, making space for those with disordered eating, people with food limitations. A lot of the tech industry is focused on meetings over food, meetings over lunch, over dinner. We need to give candidates the choice to either opt out of those or to choose the restaurants themselves so that they can eat things that they're comfortable with. And don't shame people based on their eating choices. So those are my reflections on AlterConf. If you have any questions about them, you can reach out to me via email. And if you're interested in Detroit Labs careers, you can go to detroitlabs.com/careers. And that'll give you an overview of the roles that we have available and you can apply. So, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.